Welcome back to the Dingus Den, everyone. Great to have you here, where we are here for a new edition of the Comic Club to talk about Agent Venom. I'm very excited to delve into this. This is something upon your recommendation, and you know what? Something I'm very surprised I haven't delved into before. So I'm very excited to get into this. So let's do it.
Welcome to the Dingus Den.
All right. Well, welcome in Cam from Cam and Focus. Go check him out. Links down below. Great to have you here. How are you
Great to be
today?
here. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you. I love to bring people on to talk about comics, something I don't think is talked about enough. So great to have you here in the Dingus Den. Anybody that's watching, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. Very much appreciate it. But this is something that when I reached out to you, I was like, give me some suggestions of what you're a fan of, stuff that might be good to cover potentially. And you
Yeah.
gave me a bunch of things, and this was the one that stood out most to me because Venom is one of my personal favorite Marvel characters ever. And yeah, and this is one of those eras of Venom that I've known of the character of Agent Venom, but I've never read anything about Agent Venom. I can't recall prior to this anything that I've actually read with him in it.
And
Despite knowing of the character.
it's funny, whenever I suggested this to you initially, I kind of suggested it under almost like false pretenses because when I suggested Agent Venom, what I was really thinking of was my collection of Venom Space Knight, and and for some reason I just didn't make that connection of this is something completely different. And you asked me if I had any issues. I was like, yeah, I got plenty. Let's go take a look. And I'm like, oh well, damn, that's not what I was talking about.
You know what's funny is that's also another Venom era I haven't read as well that I want to get into as well. So maybe we'll get to that at some point as well. But
For sure.
this is something I'm excited to delve into. This is all written by Rick Remender, as we're specifically talking about the first 5 issues of the 2011 Venom run, which is interesting. The back of a bunch of comics, they'll have the sort of like readers sort of like column, like the where they could send in fan questions or where the writer will write about stuff in it.
Mm-hmm.
The back at the very end of this first issue, they claimed that this was the 90th issue, Venom issue done, which is interesting because this is only the second Venom volume to come out. Meaning there was a prior Venom run where it was just a bunch of Venom, and then before that, it was a butt ton of Venom miniseries because when Venom was blowing up, specifically in the 90s, becoming his own character, he had a bunch of his own miniseries, the first being Lethal Protector, and then getting all these other stuff. And so it's interesting that Venom's been such a heavy presence for at this point. I don't remember the exact year he debuted, but a little over 20, 25 years.
Yeah,
Sounds right.
and I think to this day, Lethal Protector is still probably one of his most famous
Oh, yeah.
storylines for
Yeah.
sure. And there have been a bunch of other ones too. I mean, back in 2016, I started collecting the Venom and Carnage series. They had their own series together. Fantastic, by the way. I'd recommend reading that if you haven't. And it's well with a character like this. It was kind of a given that he was going to get as popular as he did because he's basically kind of Spider-Man, but he's dark and evil and lethal. I guess you would say, and people love an anti-hero, and Venom kind of skates that line between anti-hero and villain. So and really leaning into either side of that spectrum is fine with me because I just love the character as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I'm one of those people that I like Venom more as a character than Spider-Man. Spider-Man's one of those characters like I like, but like he's never been one of my favorites. I've always just thought Venom was a cooler version, and
Yeah.
I've loved what I've read of him in the comics. I've read some of both classic and newer stuff, but I haven't read some of those like eras in the middle, such as this one, which is exciting to get into. Because in this we don't get Eddie as the host. Instead, it's Flash Thompson, which is interesting.
Yes.
Something I do want to mention though is even though this is the first main series with Agent Venom, it's not the first appearance of Agent Venom, which we're not going to be necessarily talking about, which is in debuted in Dan Slott's Amazing Spider-Man 654, which it was in a backstory where it like introduces showing Flash Thompson initially getting injected with the Venom. And then we got another issue because every now and then we get weird issues that's like a number 0.1 or 0.2 really. And we got one where it's 654.1. I don't remember if Slott wrote this one or if it was Remender or who. But in that issue is interesting because we got a full-blown issue with showing kind of like sets up the rules of Agent Venom. Now we do see a bunch of those rules and they're referenced in the first issue specifically, but it was like a more kind of like traditional story showing like, yeah, this is the character of Agent Venom. Because when we get into the first issue of this, we're thrown like right into it.
Oh yeah, right in the thick of things. I mean, it starts off with the massacre, which is like, okay, well, way to set the tone for a Venom story.
Yeah, absolutely. This is also one of those Venom covers. I want to share this with everyone. This is one of those covers that stood out for me for many years. I remember before I was like regularly collecting comics, I remember going into a comic store at one point. I remember seeing this cover specifically in like one of the collections for this run. And so this is one of those covers that's always stood out with me. So it's cool to finally be able to read what was in this. But yeah, as we're talking about, we get right into it here, where you're right. This massacre that just happens, we get to see these cool looking sort of Iron Man like. I think they actually mentioned they're Stark made, sort of robots here, which are interesting. And then yeah, you're right. This massacre just happens, which is it's pretty crazy right off the bat. Interesting way to start it for sure.
Yeah, it starts off in like an Eastern European country that I'm not even going to bother trying to pronounce.
Right.
And we're following this civilian who's trying to lead his mother away from the carnage, and it's just right away just hopeless, absolutely hopeless tone being set. And I mean, we'll get into what's going on here in a minute, but they're being attacked with, I think, Arctic vibranium bullets.
Yeah, that's a whole plot point of it's not just regular vibranium, it's Arctic vibranium, you know, it's interesting.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, with all the comics that I've read and all the comics that I've collected, this is the first that I'm hearing about Arctic vibranium.
Right? I know, right?
and I'm like, oh my god, where did this come from? I mean, this must be freaking awesome.
Right? Yeah, no, I was like, oh, that's interesting. Yeah. One thing I meant to mention just before we go into the issue as well. I mentioned this was all written by Rick Remender. Also want to shout out the artist in particular who worked on this too. As we see, the great art in this first issue is done by Tony Moore, who's I would say his biggest claim to fame is working on the original 6 issues of Walking Dead. And also issues 3 and most of 5 is done by Tom Fowler. So I just wanted to give a shout out to them. But yeah, look at this. Where before we even see Agent Venom, we're introduced to the main villain of this issue.
Jack-o'-lantern.
Yeah. Which he was a cool villain. I enjoyed having him throughout the most of these. I thought he was a good villain.
Yeah, and you didn't really get a whole lot of backstory, motivations, not really much of anything like that. And I mean, across 5 issues where you're focused on a character that's not this guy, then, how much are you expecting to get? So, but at the same time, I kind of like that. We have this villain who kind of comes out of nowhere. We know nothing about him. He's just there to mess things up. And, I mean, sometimes that's all you need to make an effective villain.
Yeah, I agree. And we do learn more things about him as we get a little later into this issue. We see, well, actually, literally right here, we see that he's he's working with somebody there that's like watching over everything.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. And it's pretty cool as we get right into it. Agent Venom comes right in and he just kicks ass, which is awesome to see right off the bat.
Every panel of him jumping out of that helicopter could be a poster on its own. Like, it just looks so good.
Oh yeah, these are great. Like Tony Moore just did a fantastic job. He's great. Um and so cool to see, he really did a great job here. And so but yeah, these action scenes are just fantastic here.
Hmm.
I love them so much. And we get to see it's a really cool is a bunch of these speeches of like what we're or the narrative narration that we get from Brock here, or not Brock, oh my gosh, Flash Thompson. We see that, he talks a lot about how the symbiote works. We see here that it's like, it transforms into a special soldier. He can only be out on the field for so long, which is interesting because then that sets up a whole thing of, well, you can only have it on for 48 hours until he gets completely bonded, which,
Yeah.
as we know, that's an important thing with, symbiote relationships. The way of how the government tries to control, the symbiote, which is interesting.
Yeah.
I am curious
And
to read specifically how they like got a hold of the symbiote and all that. But I haven't read the Venom right before this, so
it's also a really good narrative tool as well to set up that ticking clock.
Mhm.
If Flash Thompson can only be bonded with the symbiote for 48 hours before it
Mhm.
fully takes him over, then it kind of raises the stakes for him because you're going to have these goobers who read this and it's like, well, why doesn't he just say bonded all the time? It's like, well,
Yeah.
no, this is why.
Well, that's what I like is with a bunch of these things of how we can get these moments with uh Venom to try to do something new, So another reason why I really like Venom is it's not a character that they typically retread a bunch of like things. Like we consistently get new ideas with Venom on a regular basis, which I really like, which
Yeah.
helps keep the character fresh. Obviously, some won't land as hard as others. Like right now, in the modern comics, it's Eddie Brock's son is currently the host of Venom. I haven't read much of those yet. I've read some, but not like the current ones that's going on. But like, we're getting a bunch of like. Point is we always see new things come up with Venom, and
Yeah.
this is one of those that this Agent Venom thing. It's become a bit of like I don't want to say a cult classic sort of character, where he has a solid fan base. We see him come about in certain ways, such as in we kind of saw a version of this character. It's one of the greatest surprises
Yeah.
in
Well,
Spider-Man 2, if you played that. Um,
he's kind of become I mean, Agent Venom specifically has kind of become a bit of a niche character. It's
yeah.
people love Venom as a whole, but a lot of people love him for different reasons. And Agent Venom is kind of that character that people latch onto whenever they want to love just that anti-hero
Yeah,
kind of
yeah, sure.
character.
Yeah, it's actually. I also didn't realize that Agent Venom until recently appeared in one of the Disney Spider-Man cartoons because they have like at least 3 of those shows, and he's
Yeah,
in
well,
one of them.
was that the newest one? I forget
Could
the
be,
name of it. The one where he fights Daredevil.
maybe. I don't. Um, but yeah, one of those animated cartoons he's in it, which I didn't even know he made an on-screen appearance until like I was looking into doing some research for this, which is
Yeah.
interesting. And so it's always cool to see the connections and stuff with everything created in 2011. And so that's we're in the grand scheme of things that's pretty like recent in the grand scheme of things, so which is cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, back to this specifically. We see, this action is excellent. We see him being a hero here, which is important to show. Is one of the things that's important to Venom is even though this is a different take on Venom, it still keeps a lot of the attributes of what makes Venom Venom.
Yeah.
Like it annoys me, and we'll get to this in a bit later when we specifically get to one of the issues. But it annoys me when people call Venom a villain because Venom's not a villain beyond the first like couple arcs that he's in. Because from then he grew up to be so big and he's an anti-hero, and here we actually get to see Flash do his job being a hero here, which is
Yeah.
excellent.
Yeah, and it's interesting, as he's jumping out of that plane and he's talking about how the symbiote works. He's also talking about, basically being patriotic,
Yeah.
which it's interesting. You can almost liken the character of Agent Venom to something like, you know, like a symbiotic super soldier almost. And I mean, if well, as far as like, you know, the MCU as a whole, I'm always a big fan of, you know, the super soldier storyline, Winter Soldier, Civil War, et cetera, et
Sure.
cetera. So it kind of helps to ground this character in more of a sense of reality rather than just
Sure.
have him be, you know, some wild tentacle flailing force of nature.
Sure. And we get this cool sense, and it delves into it a bit more, but it definitely sets it up here of this whole idea of him needing to have control. He needs to stay calm to be able to control the symbiote. And
Yeah.
we get throughout several times, but this is our first
Oh, what a
really
great
look at it
frame.
here. I love it so much, where we just go through and see, that Venom face on it, and it's so
Just
cool.
slowly gets worse and worse.
Yeah, so cool how it works here. Yeah, it's really one of those times where the art here really shines, which I really like.
Yeah.
And so Tony Moore did such a great job here. And here we get also showing though, the difference between a hero and an anti-hero. We see him be absolutely ruthless, where he just straight up sticks a grenade in his face and kaboom, where I thought he was a goner, but instead he just has a really messed up face now, which is I don't know. I guess he has some sort of immortal quality. I'm not too familiar with the character Jack O'Lantern. Like I've seen him like in a thing here and there, but like
I
I'm
don't
not
know
a
if,
huge Tom
if he wears a
Fowler.
flaming pumpkin as a head. I feel like
I guess
there's
so.
something, there might be something supernatural going on there.
I mean, fair, but I would also think a grenade to the head's a grenade to the head. To be fair,
It
but
might cause a bit of a problem.
yeah, but yeah, that's pretty much what we see in this first issue, though, which was a nice setup overall. We see the government takes back the symbiote, and then we also get this foundation of him with
Betty
Betty.
Brant.
Thank you, Betty Brant. Not
Yes.
a character I'm really familiar with, I'll be honest, but it's a big, we get a big relationship triangle between her, him, and Peter Parker as we go, which is
Yeah,
interesting
and
to see.
yeah, but Peter kind of acts as like her confidant, I suppose. And Peter is vouching for Flash in a major way, well, which I really appreciate. You know,
Mm,
it's nice to see. You know, I mean, granted, Peter Parker and Flash Thompson don't exactly see eye to eye on everything,
mhm.
but I like a good frenemies relationship. You know, it's like I don't agree with you, but I'll still defend you.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting to see how times have changed. A bunch of those effects coming from what Dan Slott did with Spider-Man. This comes out during like the peak era of Dan Slott's like
Hmm.
Spider-Man run. He wrote the character for over 10 years, which is insane. And this comes out of one of the biggest eras because following this arc that we're talking about is Spider Island, which is one of his biggest stories that he wrote. And so it comes at a very interesting time in Spider-Man history, which is cool to see where everything comes from. But yeah, and yeah, we're about to talk about some Peter stuff too. But issue 2, shout out to the classic um, McFarlane, Todd McFarlane homage
I
cover
love that
there.
cover. I
That
love that
that's
cover
pretty
so
cool.
much.
Yeah, yeah, pretty sweet. It's one of those one of the most I'm gonna say most homage covers, redone covers that we see, but it works pretty well here. I like it, and I love the way the story opens too, where it's just him running through the sort of jungle, being hunted. You can pick up from context clues right away that it's Craven chasing him.
Yeah, I was not expecting that when I opened up the issue. I'm thinking, wait a minute, did I miss something? How did he end up here?
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy because it you know, we s- we begin in a very sort of calm place, and then here it's action right off the bat, and it's not until like maybe a quarter of the way in the issue where we get any context of what's going on either.
Yeah.
And so, I definitely feel that, which is cool. And I thought it was a cool way to bring in such a big Spider-Man villain as well,
Mm-hmm.
and really showing how fierce of a villain he is.
Oh yeah. I mean, he's got Flash Thompson on the run with like
Yeah,
4 spears in his back.
It's insane, and it's crazy too because I don't think Craven. I could be completely wrong on this, but I don't think Craven knows the identity of Spider-Man. At this point, because obviously people learn his identity over time,
Sure.
and stuff, and part of it makes me think of how he's hunting him because he's probably thinking it's at this point the same version of Spider-Man, possibly from Craven's Last Hunt, because that's when he had the symbiote suit in that
Yeah.
storyline, and there's that famous cover of the grave of him coming out of the grave in that black suit, and so I don't know, I knowing that connection, it makes this fight kind of hit a little harder for why Craven would be going hard after him.
And as it goes on, especially towards the end of their encounter, yeah, I mean, I don't know about you, but I kind of got the impression that Craven actually wanted something from Flash. I couldn't quite pinpoint what it was based on what I was reading. I'm sure it's expanded on later, but it seemed like Craven wasn't trying to kill him. He was more trying to get something from him.
That's interesting, is I was just looking at it more of that he was just wanting it as another trophy. Because his whole thing is that he's a maniac wanting trophies all over his house,
Right.
the kill he gets. So, but yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see because this is the only issue we get him in. But it'd be cool to see if that ever does get expanded upon in some ways.
Yeah.
Craven's such a rich character, so yeah, very possible. Also, it's cool because they're on the Savage Lands here, as we see a bunch of dinosaurs. He's also just riding
Oh
a
yeah.
dinosaur, which is insane to see right off the bat, which is really cool. Seeing Flash have to deal with the stuff on his own, realizing that he's bonded for too long at this
Hmm.
point. Stranded on his own. It's cool to see him having to deal with these troubles on his own.
Yeah, it shows that he's a character with agency. Whenever you have a character who's, I guess, quote unquote government sponsored, it's very easy to fall into the narrative trap of just have them be a character who goes where they're told, does what they're told to do. I
Yeah.
mean, you can build drama within that, but what really endears an audience or a reader to a character is seeing that character overcome things of their own volition rather than have be
Mhm.
something that they or ordered to
Sure.
do or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. It's interesting because this really does, I think you could argue, well, you could say as well that it really lays the foundation for actions that he'd take later on.
Yeah.
Because by the end, we see him take some choices that are, particularly at the end of issue 4, there's some choices that he makes that's like, oh, interesting. Not kind of what you would expect from him right off the bat, at least for me, but it makes sense, and then it does little get elaborated on where it's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But also we get giant bats, which is interesting. Not I was certainly not expecting that. Those seem like they came out of nowhere. Um,
Yeah, well, whenever you're reading these comics, you could start with issue 1 of a certain series, but that issue 1 is actually issue 4,000 something something of a whole big larger story.
Right.
So you're gonna get things dropped in on you where you're just like,
Yeah.
oh God, what is this? Where did this come from? And it's like, okay, well, you have to read this comic and this comic and this one and this
Yeah.
one and this one just to figure out why that character is there.
Yeah, I know. It's like I know like the Savage Land. I read some stuff. I've never seen those giant bats, and so I was like, oh, well, that's cool. Uh, but into this issue, we also do get the reveal that what was this person's name? It's not shown, but the mysterious figure, the Crime Master, is that what it's called? It's nothing kind of corny
Yeah.
like that he's called. This crime lord, he figures out he knows the identity of Agent Venom as the symbiote left him at
Hmm.
the end of that battle. And we then move on to issue 3, where we get the return of the jack-o'-lantern, which is cool. And here we got to really see, I think him as a villain, he really is a good villain in this first arc as a whole. And this is when things
Yeah.
are getting really interesting with him.
Well, especially with having it open up with him, slaughtering all those people, it really sets him up to be a very intimidating
Oh yeah,
presence.
for sure. definitely agree. I love these images of
Oh,
like
yes. I
it,
love that so much.
oh yeah. So because I remember after I read this issue, I really like the first two issues, don't get me wrong. But it's this third issue that cemented for me, oh, this shit that I'm reading, this is great. 'Cause after I read issue 3, I told you, "Hey, I'm gonna have to get this Agent Venom omnibus because it just came out. I want to say a couple months ago. They just came out with a whole big omnibus collecting the entire all the main stuff of Agent Venom, and I think it collects the, like
Nice.
Space Knight stuff as well because it's all part of that same saga, I believe. I think it includes all that. But point is, though, it's a really nice big sized omnibus of like nearly 60 issues, I think. It's a biggie, but and obviously a lot, but that's obviously a bang for your buck right there. And so
Yeah, definitely well worth it, especially to have such a large story condensed into,
yeah,
one
one
piece
big
of
thing.
media
Yeah,
rather than,
it's
you
nice.
know, rather than dozens of comic books. It's like it's all in one book. It's nice to
Super
have
nice.
it so
It's
concise.
nice. It is nice. I do like some of the ones that I have. The ones I have of other stuff. So like, they're nice to have. They're nice collector pieces if you can afford them.
Sure.
But this in particular, I love the mix that we get here of that Agent Venom, but with the Venom breaking through since, you know, as it was established last issue, he's past that 48 hours where he starts, he's lost control at this point, and from here on out, we're having to see him battle for control, which is a great, it's a really cool way to see that relationship come together.
Yeah.
Uh, and yeah, I really like it, and just particularly this art here is just amazing here.
Just
Which
really strong imagery throughout the series so far. I mean, I,
yeah,
I was honestly surprised. I mean, if you look back at especially a lot of the older comics, and I mean, not that I'm knocking the artists for what they did before,
mhm,
but but older comics tend to be a little short when it comes to truly striking imagery, and I mean that this series, especially between with issues 1 and 3 in particular, really delivered in that regard.
yeah. The art in these have been absolutely fantastic. Can't shout out Tony Moore and Tom Fowler enough. As we see Venom continuing his mission, and he's going through this facility to get the Arctic vibranium, right? That's what it's called. The
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. And we see him starting to bring it back in a helicopter, but we get this great reveal that Betty's held captive by Jack o' Lantern. Is
yep,
he's holding her
yeah.
hostage.
I was a little peeved at that because I'm thinking,
Yeah,
oh God, we have a damsel in distress here, but
sure.
um, I mean, it serves the story well enough, and at the
Mhm,
very least, it didn't seem forced or
mhm,
gratuitous. Whenever you
yeah,
have a Spider-Man story in general, you're gonna
yeah,
have loved ones being taken
yeah.
captive at
I
some
mean,
point.
you could argue it happened rather quick because we're only issue 3, and we are a villain who's set up to be his main villain at this point in
Right.
time, or knows who he is now. Um,
Well, what it has going in its favor, though, on the other hand, is the fact that up until this point, with as little time as we had gotten with Betty
mhm,
Brant, just in this particular series so far,
yeah.
they really did a good job of setting up the drama between her and Flash Thompson because
Oh
you
yeah.
know that they're in a relationship together. She feels very neglected. He's a drunk. He's a cripple. There's a lot going on
Sure.
there, and a lot of information conveyed in a really small amount of time. That while it might feel a little rushed at times, it does really help to kind of add to the gravitas of what's happening now.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. I'd agree. It's an interesting relationship once we get into it, and I think it particularly is in this issue where like things start to get really interesting as we start bringing in Agent Venom's going back to New York, bringing back the vibranium that he's being forced to do so, or else Betty's gonna die, and then Spider-Man comes back,
Yeah,
which is cool to see. Spider-Man's back, and we see there he is delivering it to the crime lord dude. Crime Master. That's what his name is there.
Crime Master. Well, we did Crime Lord, Crime Boss, Crime something or other. It's
Yeah,
like the one word we didn't actually think
No,
of.
no. It was something that I remember was like corny like that, you know, and some guy, but yeah, no. We see him. He delivers the stuff here, and he's going off to save Betty, as But then, as it happens, Spider-Man interferes, thinking, "Oh, what the heck is Venom doing around here?" All doing his bad things here, and I do find it interesting that he kind of, I don't know, outright attacks Venom. I don't know if he had the best, sort of urgency to like try to go ahead and stop him, because he was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I haven't seen you right away." Because at this point, Venom's done a lot of good, but the next issue in particular, because we end off with them starting their fight, and then the whole thing with this sort of military Venom way that they try to control is that very sort of Suicide Squad idea of they could have that button to terminate
Yeah.
person. And we see the issue literally begin here with them terminating that button here, or them pressing the button to try to terminate Venom, which obviously, spoiler alert, there's several there's a lot of issues in the series, so obviously that button doesn't work for him. uh, but this issue in particular really stood out to me, issue 4, where shout out to this cover. I really like this cover here,
Yes. Yes.
which is possibly my favorite of all the covers. But this issue in particular, I really like how it highlights the relationship between not necessarily Eddie Brock and Spider-Man, but Venom and Spider-Man, because here we get to see when Venom actually takes over.
Yeah.
Um, and it really highlights their relationship of what I think the writer gets their relationship to the core of it. While you could argue the Spider-Man, him interfering, feels a little forced, um, I think it's made up for at least me personally, where I was like, oh, okay. We here see the relationship of uh even though Venom's trying to do something right, the way I always put their relationship is that they're coworkers that don't like each other. And that
Yeah.
essentially is what's shown here, in the way that I think um it's what their relationship normally is. And it's interesting and exciting too, because we get to see it all from Flash's perspective here, where he's trying to do the right thing, but he's lost control of Venom, who obviously has the grudge against Spider-Man. Spider-Man obviously initiated the fight, so at this point, Venom's like, "Screw you! I'm gonna beat you to a pulp." At this point,
Yeah. The gloves are off.
yeah, gloves are off. And I love the fight scenes and everything in here too.
Yeah.
We
Very,
get
very dynamic action.
Yeah, it's fantastic. We see how Venom's like a bit bulkier at this point too, because he's lost control. It's Venom taking over. It's not the agent
Yeah.
suit, which is cool to see. Although we still have some elements of like the suit and whatever there. It's a cool design that we get here, and then we get this excellent double spread, which is really cool.
Mm.
And so lots of cool stuff here. And but it ends with, though, as we get throughout this issue, where Spider-Man ends up making the rescue when uh when Venom didn't, make it in time, which is just, as we're talking about this interesting sort of triangle relationship, it's interesting to see it as it happens here.
Yeah.
Also,
Well,
I love how at this point in time, Spider-Man gave Venom the tracker, and then when he runs back into Jack-o'-lantern again, he places the tracker on Jack-o'-lantern. I was like, "Oh, that's great."
well, that's a very Spider-Man thing for him to do.
Yeah, it's funny because it makes it apparent that he's like, "Oh yeah, I knew that he put it on me." He's literally holding it up right onto him there, but. And he's like, "You know what? I think this will be helpful." And we see him use it a few pages later, which is a cool little sort of like payoff that we got there. So but no, overall, I liked the relationships involved in this issue because not only that, but we also see how Flash is feeling like a failure. Throughout all these issues, we haven't talked about it too much, but his relationship with Betty, that's
Yeah.
always a thing that's been prevalent throughout all these issues. Throughout that second issue, his whole motivation for him to make it out of this lonely situation, being stranded where he is at in the Savage Lands, his whole motivation was to make it back to Betty, where Betty's like, I don't think Flash is it for me anymore,
Yeah.
and so it's they really get hard into their relationships, especially and we'll talk about issue 5 in a moment. But that one in particular hits really hard with the relationships too. But yeah, get some more Jack-o'-lantern, like I briefly mentioned. And here we see a moment that I was referencing a little bit earlier on, where we see Flash. He straight up lies about his report of not telling everything of what happened. He only told the military. It's kind of like one of those sort of like half truths. He told him like,
Hmm.
well, that yeah, like everything I told him wasn't a lie, but he just didn't tell him the full story. And as we learn a little later about why he did that. Um, which I thought was interesting because at the time when he first did, I was like, "Why is he doing it?" And then it does get elaborated on. I think it's next issue. He kind of talks about why he did that.
Right. Right.
That was interesting.
And it kind of calls back to what I had said before about the character of Flash Thompson having a lot of agency.
Yeah,
He's not just a government drone. Well, what's the who are the people he works for? Project Rebirth? Is that what they're called?
yeah, that was the facility.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a facility there. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. But he's a character with his own motivations, with his own wants and
yeah,
desires and stuff. And I've always found that a character telling a lie adds a lot more character to a character than
sure.
them telling the truth all the time.
Yeah,
So yeah, I'm curious to see the ultimate culmination of this character, because there's a lot being set up in these issues
yeah,
as far as his relationship with Betty, his relationship with the government, his relationship with his father, which we get to in the next issue.
yeah.
Um, it's all just really compelling stuff, and I'm really curious to see where this
Yeah.
goes.
Yeah, no, you're bringing up really good points there of all these relationships that's come up in a great way throughout all these. And the last one to mention here is we get this great conversation at the end. And I love this last panel in particular, where it's Flash and Peter are talking with each other about the situation of what happened, and each kind of like trickling in their views in it, and not knowing each other who's you know each other's identities here, which is really I don't know. It brings in some really cool relationship sort of drama between the characters and stuff,
Yeah,
which
it
is really
does.
neat. Um,
Because when you have two characters who are talking and kind of waxing philosophical, but they don't know each other's secret identities, there's a lot of
yeah,
subtext
yeah.
that you can really read into, and it just makes their conversation so much more compelling.
Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah, it was pretty cool, and I thought they did a good job there. And that issue for me felt like it was kind of like the end of the first sort of major arc. We got the first. We got his run in with Jack O' Lantern, where we get the setup of the organization, and then we got to see 2, 3, and 4 are just like all directly connected with each other there.
Yeah.
Kind of like a nice, as you said, a nice setup where I'm excited to see where it all goes from here with all this stuff going on. But this issue in particular, shout out to another great cover here. Um,
Yes.
all these covers have been fantastic, but this issue in particular, I after reading it, I was like really surprised by how dark it got because I feel like you don't often see Marvel go this dark.
Yeah.
And it was just one of those things. I'm like, oh wow, they let I don't know. Remender got away with something that I think like we don't typically see from Marvel, which is cool, but also something that I think really helps this issue stand out. Um, because I don't know. I sort of, not that it's necessarily a bad thing, but I always think of Marvel being sort of a lighter force of good overall.
Typically, yeah.
Typically versus something like DC, where they have a lot more dark stuff overall. Obviously there's um outliers in each. Obviously Superman's meant to be that force of great hope and good luck, brightness and stuff, hope, as he's meant to be known for. And then, obviously we have things like this where Venom does get darker. But even for a Venom comic, I was like, wow, this did get dark. Even for a Venom story. So, but yeah, this one in particular, it's just one for me. One big character study. We do get, at the very beginning, the obligatory superhero action scene where he fights against what is his name? Human Fly? Absolutely disgusting of a villain. Like, look at that. He just barfs all over there's a rat there and just eats it. And oh my, yeah, terrible. But we see him come in. One thing I wanted to say that I forgot to mention about Agent Venom is that um, previously in the issues, and this makes sense because we've known Flash Thompson as somebody that looks up to Spider-Man,
Sure.
despite not liking Peter Parker at first. It's one of those interesting dynamics early on in Spider-Man lore. Obviously, things have gotten made up now where they talk to each other on a couch now. But prior to this issue, he said a bunch of quips and stuff throughout a bunch of things, and he made a lot of fun like references and stuff here and there. There's one in particular I liked. It was in the second issue where he literally mentions Michael Bay when the explosion, which I love that in particular. Or maybe it was in the third issue when he's escaping, actually. But point is, there's a Michael Bay reference. We get quips of like what Spider-Man would do, but here we're seeing a shift in the character. Was it right here? Maybe it's just after where he's like, oh yeah, you're probably expecting me to do some sort of quips, but I'm not, I'm not that Spider-Man guy. Which is, I don't know, interesting of how we're already seeing just from these first 5 issues some development of him growing into this darker sort of, person than where he originally began. And also saying something that we didn't mention about the government either, and it applies right here as well, because he at the end of the day, he did what a hero should have done. He saved the day. But we also see every time that he goes back, he just gets absolutely berated by the government of being like, oh, this case, you shouldn't have let him, the publicity is bad. Other cases, he outright failed on his mission. But yeah, he's everything's crashing down on him. We talked about how he had troubles with Betty, and then here we bring in a whole other part of troubles in his life, personal troubles with his father, where we learn this whole backstory about his father. His mother's calling, saying something's wrong. Saying that she needs him to get his drunk father, who's just absolutely lost it.
Yeah.
And he's monologuing as he's going through all these times, and we see some flashbacks here and there, and it really sets up Flash's character about like who he really like sort of is. I don't know. I didn't know about the stuff of his father. I don't know if this is like new information or not, but
I'm not 100% sure either, but it does add a lot of I thought, well, is the right word dynamicism? I don't know.
Sure.
But it adds more complexity to his character because it shows that there's more going on in the background than just what's at the forefront.
Yeah.
What's the next action scene he has to partake in? What are his orders next? There's a lot more drama boiling under the surface than we realize, and seeing not just his relationship with his father, but also how he feels about his relationship with his father, really adds a good amount of depth to a character that otherwise could have come off very, very gimmicky, very one note. Yeah, because Flash Thompson. Let's be frank. You think of a character named Flash Thompson, and you think of somebody very flamboyant and somebody very just very out there. But
yeah,
this is bringing up a level of existential dread and family drama and
Mm.
personal drama that I really wasn't expecting from something like this, and
No.
it's very welcome.
Yeah, I agree. And this is just a very surprising issue, like I said, of just like, it's dark for a Marvel comic, as I've said, is, eventually finds his father, who then learns that he had what is it called? That he kept a big secret that he was sick with something, and so that's why he was became back into a drunk. And
Oh yeah, he has cirrhosis, which is
that's it.
alcohol-induced liver failure.
And at the very end, it implies that he's in my interpretation of it, I assume that's what it's meant to be, is that he's gone by the end of the issue. Is
Yeah, and
it's a
if
very
if that
powerful
is the
aspect.
case, if that is the case, it makes the ending of the issue a lot more tragic
Yeah,
because his father is trying to talk to him, and not Eddie, Flash is just leaving. I mean, yeah, he
yeah,
doesn't want it. He doesn't want any part of it.
yeah,
And when he gets out there and he collapses in the snow with Betty, it just makes for a very
yeah,
very emotional moment that is then hammered into the ground with him taking that phone call and saying he'll be there. It's like, okay, well, damn, there's more drama to be had.
yeah. It's like that's a quite a ending, because yeah, no, it's just insane. Of this, like it, it's such a really nice sort of well done. I feel like one issue, character, looking into the character, and
Yeah.
it's also just so dark. Like I said, I'm just surprised that Marvel got away with something like this, because like we don't often see something like this from Marvel, and obviously I'm hung up on that, and so
Yeah.
um
Well, the darkness really adds a good layer of humanity
yeah,
to the characters because obviously not everything is all sunshine and rainbows, and Marvel is known very heavily for its da da da
yeah,
da kind of stories.
right,
But to take a character like this and bring the drama down to such a profoundly human level. It's great. I love it, and that's what keeps me engaged as a reader, and also as a viewer as well. Like what one of my
mm,
favorite comic book films is Logan.
oh yeah,
Logan is rife with character drama, and it's very human character drama,
yeah,
and it's not just oh, we're on the run from these people and big gunshots and explosions and I have to protect this girl and
mm,
whatnot. It's like no, it's existential dread, it's family drama,
yeah.
it's so many different layers of engagement that really pull you in, and we're getting flavors of that with this particular series, and that just makes me so happy.
Yeah, no, it's great. It has me excited to read more. It's one of those things, like as I mentioned pretty early on, that there's that big omnibus that came out. I want to get that. I want the full story of it now. I really want it. It's one of those that I think is worthy and worthy for me to get the whole thing.
Yes.
If there's something that's good enough, you want to own it, and this is one of those that's for me. Of where when we first talked about this, I was like, here, let me think about if I want to buy it or not, and then obviously I went with I'll just read it digitally, and then could always pick up the physical later. And I'm gonna have to get it. So, but this has been honestly a great read. I have been thoroughly enjoying it. I'm glad that you gave me got me to actually reading it. I was gonna say give me an excuse to read it, which I guess would also be true. But but yeah, no. I don't know. Do you have any closing overall thoughts on this, or any other closing overall thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, for the first five issues of a series, I think it's exceptionally strong.
Sure.
Again, the drama feels very human. The action is really great. The art is outstanding.
Yeah.
It's just such a great start to a character that has so much
Yeah.
room to grow, and with me owning as much Venom Space Knight as I do, I feel like I own like the second half of a much larger story. So I'm like, well, damn, I have to go back and catch up now.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's so much rich history everywhere.
Yes.
with all these characters and stuff. So that's really cool. But yeah, that'll I think that pretty much does it for this video. There was, we talked about a good bit of Agent Venom, this first whole main solo story arc, which is fun to talk about. I'm glad that we covered it. I definitely echo everything that she said there. It was a lot of fun. And yeah, I'm looking forward to reading some more of this as I'm a big Venom fan, and this is something that I'm excited to just get into more of. It'll be awesome. So,
Absolutely.
but anyway,
Absolutely.
where could the people find you at?
So you can find me over on Cam and Focus on YouTube. Well, we go live pretty much every Sunday with a movie of the week. This coming Sunday we're going to be looking a little deep into Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, which I can't tell if I am very excited to watch this or if not one single bone in my body wants to watch this. I haven't quite made that distinction yet, but
Oh.
it's going to be a good time. You can catch that over on Cam and Focus. That's going to be on this coming Sunday. When this video goes up, which I think you said is going to be on Friday, so you can find it
Yeah,
on
yeah.
that following Sunday at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. We go live every Sunday at that time. So tune in, like, and subscribe if you haven't, and it'll be a good time.
Absolutely. I'm going to make sure your channel's linked down below, so everybody give Cam a subscribe, and go check out the movie reviews that I'm there sometimes. I've been there more than not as of fairly recently,
Sure.
and so been fun times over there. I am actually looking forward to the Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey myself. So go check that out,
It's
everyone.
if nothing else, it's going to be a fun discussion.
Oh, yes, I'm sure it'll be a very fun time, and everyone's gonna look at me and be like, "Why did you wanna do this?" So, it'll be fun. So make sure to hit that like and subscribe button here as well, for more comic content. I'm trying to do things weekly. Also, make sure to check out Before the Cape, the Smallville show that I do with our mutual friend Andrew as well as Ian. So that'll be a bunch of fun. And yeah, see you all later next time here in the Dingus Den. Laters, everyone. Bye.